You have PCOS and you are trying to get pregnant, and you want to know how to nourish your body, how to feed your body in a way that supports your fertility the most. If that's you, then you are in exactly the right place, because today you are getting a deep dive into this big question of, is gluten good or bad for my fertility? As a nutritionist and a doctor, I am going to walk you through how to understand if gluten is creating a problem for your fertility. Welcome to the PCOS Fertility Health Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Angela Potter. I am the creator of the PCOS Fertility Protocol, an integrative fertility doctor, helping you to understand the root cause of what's keeping you stuck, what's missing from your fertility plan that's keeping you from getting pregnant, and how to turn those around so that you have the best chance at getting pregnant with PCOS. If you are a new listener here today, welcome. I am overjoyed to have you here. Know that you are joining a community of women who are committed to their health, who are not taking no for an answer, who are saying, I want more answers, I want more information, I want to know because I can feel that my body can make these changes. And they are forward thinkers, they are positive thinkers, they are committed to optimizing their fertility health. So you are joining this community just by listening to this episode today, and welcome. And if you are a longtime listener, welcome back. You know that I absolutely love having you here. And I am so happy to be here with you today answering this big question of, okay, is gluten good or bad for fertility? Is there one answer that will just unveil the truth and make things really simple? We are going to dive into this important topic today. But before we get into it, I want to be sure, have you gotten your ticket to the upcoming free PCOS masterclass that I'm hosting? It is about the proven PCOS path that has taken women like yourself who are feeling lost and broken, who have been trying to conceive for 6 years, 7, 11 years, and has taken them from being in that place and been the bridge, what they needed to get to a place where they were able to get pregnant successfully. And this masterclass is going to outline this PCOS path that has been proven by women before you. And you are going to understand, okay, what is this path that can take you from feeling lost and broken and get you to a place where your fertility is optimized? And how can you apply it to your own fertility journey where you are exactly today? And how it can help you turn around your fertility so that you have the best chance at getting pregnant with PCOS. These are concrete steps that you can take. And so you don't want to miss this. You can sign up for the upcoming masterclass over at drangelapotter.com/PCOS-class. And I'll have that link for you in the show notes. All right, so now let's talk about gluten, because I want to help you understand, first off, is gluten good or bad for your fertility? Because I want you to be nourishing your body and feeding your body in this way that supports optimal fertility, supports good hormone balance, supports regular cycles, optimal ovulation, all these things that you're looking for so that you can get pregnant and grow your family. And I want you to understand, what are different signs that my body might be showing me that gluten is good or bad? How can I know for sure that gluten is good or bad for my fertility? And to really weave this into your story right now, so then you can take these steps and implement and understand more about your fertility journey right now. What is gluten? Let's start there. So gluten is the protein. It's the protein structure. There's actually 2 specific proteins, and gluten we just use as the overarching name for them. Gluten is the protein in wheat that your body digests and eats when you're eating wheat. Anything that has wheat flour in it, bread, cakes, cookies, muffins, pasta, when you are eating something that has wheat flour in it, you are eating that gluten in the pasta, in the bread, in what you're eating. And your body, it has to digest that protein. And sometimes that protein can be really difficult to digest, which can lead to not only symptoms like bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, all these digestive stuff that you just don't want to be dealing with, but internally it can also be creating this inflammation that is not just localized to your digestive tract. It's actually creating inflammation in your reproductive tract and your uterus and your pelvis, and creating this inflammation that can be negatively impacting your ability to get pregnant. So over the past few years, it's been a while now actually, that gluten has gotten a really bad rap for health. A lot of people will just clump gluten into being the bad food that is creating almost any kind of health condition or symptom. It's like gluten is the problem. You got to take out gluten and everything will open up for you. But is that true? I mean, I myself am a doctor, and before becoming a doctor, I was a nutritionist. I have a decade of experience looking into different food trends and how foods are responding in people's bodies and how to set up a food plan that creates health. And I will tell you that in that decade of experience that I have, yes, sometimes it is beneficial to take gluten out of the diet, but it is in no way something you could use as a blanket statement to say everybody has to take gluten out of their diets, and particularly for PCOS and fertility. But we need to dive into this a little bit more. You might be asking yourself, is there research out there? Is there research showing us if gluten is good or bad for PCOS? And right now, there's no research showing us that taking gluten out of a diet is the golden ticket for pregnancy. There's not research showing us that gluten is creating the hormone imbalances, increasing testosterone levels, keeping ovulation low. There's no research that is definitively telling us that gluten is good nor bad for fertility. Now, just because research is not showing us anything about that, it doesn't mean that we can just take a back seat on this and say, oh, okay, well, whatever, it's just kind of a mute subject. No, we've got to dissect this a little bit more. And this is why I talk about the importance of an individualized fertility plan and why I stand behind that you have got to have an individualized plan that addresses what your body is showing that it needs in order to improve fertility. Because here's the thing, for say vitamins like vitamin D, we have some really good research behind it to say, okay, if you're deficient in vitamin D, that is contributing to poorer egg quality, to keeping cycles more irregular, and improving vitamin D status, having it in optimal fertility ranges, which, by the way, is higher than most standard reference ranges, but you can listen to past podcast episodes to get more info on that. And having vitamin D in that optimal fertility range improves those fertility markers. Okay, so that's pretty clear information. And we don't have that for gluten. But that doesn't mean that there isn't ways to find out if gluten is actually contributing to you or not, because that is the key. It's not about the gluten. It's not that gluten inherently is good or bad for fertility. What needs to happen is to look at your body to understand, is your body responding to the gluten in a way that is positively supporting your fertility and your nutrition? Or is it responding to that gluten in a way that is negatively impacting your cycles and your egg quality and your fertility? That is the number one way to find out if gluten is good or bad for your fertility. You've got to understand your own body. And this is not just saying, oh, we're going to just sit outside on the grass and close our eyes and ask our bodies if gluten is good or bad for my body. No, not at all. No, there are steps to figure this out. In order to do that, we need to understand how the body responds to gluten. And there's really two ways that the body responds to gluten. There are two ways that I'm going to cover in this podcast. And the first way is through celiac disease. Celiac disease is an autoimmune condition where the body just innately attacks the gluten protein. That is something that is genetic. People are born with. There are certain countries in this world that they will test for celiac disease when a baby is born to know if it has struggles with this or not, because it can lead to some pretty severe digestive issues, cramping, bloating, gas, malnutrition. And if it goes undiagnosed, people can live for years and have all of those awful symptoms and not know that it's because of the gluten that they're eating, because they have an autoimmune condition, celiac, creating these symptoms against the gluten. Now, for people who have celiac disease, as long as they don't eat gluten, those symptoms will disappear and their bodies will be able to move and respond and be really healthy as long as they aren't getting exposed to that one protein that their body is predisposed to attack. So that's celiac disease. That's an autoimmune condition. Now, the other way that the body responds to gluten is through a gluten sensitivity. This is through an IgG food sensitivity. This is when somebody is eating gluten and the body has either not enough enzymes or leaky gut going on. The gut microbiome is just not adequate in order to digest the protein. Potentially the proteins aren't getting digested and then they're moving through the leaky gut junctions to go through into the bloodstream. And again, this is setting someone up for symptoms, the classic symptoms I've been talking about, right? Constipation, gas, bloating, diarrhea, digestive issues that are uncomfortable. How this is different from celiac disease is that it's not, for most people, something that they're born with. It's not genetic. It has to do with different factors of the body, your environment that you've been exposed to and how that's either helping or hindering your digestive system. Different foods that we've eaten can set the body up for having leaky gut or not being able to digest certain proteins. Gluten coming from certain sources, potentially pesticides are playing a role in this as well. So certain pesticides with the gluten then are impacting gut health when you're eating them. And what that sets someone like yourself up for is this inflammatory response to that gluten protein when you're eating gluten. And so when you eat some bread or eat some pasta, the body is recognizing that gluten protein and it's saying, alert, alert, alert. We don't like this protein. We need to get it out of the body. And that's the immune system that is increasing its guards. The immune system acts as like this army. It's inherently protecting your body. But there have been some crossed wires here. And so your body thinks that gluten is something bad. It's not actually a nutrient for your body. When it sees that coming through your digestive system, it says, alert, alert, man the troops, like get all these other immune and inflammation cells up and running. We've got to get this out of the body. And what that does is that increases inflammation. And it can be increasing inflammation in the digestive tract, but it could also, because that immune response is increasing the immune system in the whole body, it can increase inflammation, say, in the uterus. And how this impacts fertility is that when your body sees that sperm coming in, it could say, okay, we got to actually get this sperm out because we are on high alert for getting things out of the body. And this is something foreign and we have got to get that out. Okay, so it can attack the sperm. If the egg does get fertilized, the body can say, hey, this is a foreign object. Let's get it out. And it increases your risk for early miscarriage as well because of this inflammation that's happening that started back with the gluten that you ate. I'm not saying that's happening to you right now. Right now, you're just learning these different responses of gluten in the body. And how can you understand if this is impacting you and your fertility health? And are you beginning to really see that, yes, this is important to understand for your body, what's coming up for how your body is responding to gluten. And that could very well be different from your friends and the other people in the Facebook group. Everyone has a different response, which is why it's so key to understand your body's response and how your body is digesting gluten to understand how gluten plays a role in your fertility. So how do you know? If you need to know if you have celiac disease or not, there's a simple blood test, and you can go get tested and understand if you have celiac. Now, if you're not having some pretty significant digestive symptoms, you have a really low risk of having celiac disease, because people who have celiac disease and are actively eating gluten feel pretty miserable. But still, you can get that simple blood test to know if your body has celiac or not. To understand a food sensitivity, the gold standard is an elimination diet. And when we're talking about gluten, you would focus on gluten. You would take gluten out for 4 weeks, and you would make sure that you are not getting exposed to anything that has gluten. And let me tell you, it can be found in some pretty tricky places. Soy sauce is one of the biggest things that surprises people that can have gluten in it. So you take all gluten, all forms of gluten out of your diet. After those 4 weeks, then you eat some gluten and you see, how does your body respond? Your body will tell you very quickly if it likes that gluten or not. If within a day or two, or even that same day, you are having stomach cramps or something on your skin, a rash or acne pop up, if your mood turns sour really quickly, and again, those classic digestive symptoms, if you're responding to gluten in that way, then you know that your body is sensitive to gluten at this time. Now, the other important thing to know about a food sensitivity is that it's not something that you have to live with for the rest of your life. Because when you're responding to that food, it has to do with your own digestive system and gut health, which can be turned around. So once you have that really key information about whether gluten is good for you or not, then you hold this amazing power to know about your own health. In that moment, if you're responding negatively, then you can say, wow, gluten was not helping my fertility journey. And if I can move forward without that gluten, imagine how that's going to start turning things around for my cycles, my egg quality, and my ovulation. That's a really powerful information for you to have. But you don't have to think, I have to avoid gluten for the rest of my life, because we also have to look at your gut health to understand, well, why is it that your body is responding poorly to gluten? How can we lower the inflammation even more? This inflammation that's been happening while you've been eating gluten, how can we lower that? And let's figure out how to support your gut health. Do you have some bacteria in there that shouldn't be there? Something going on that's keeping your gut health low? And there's a whole spectrum of things that can be going on, okay? But you need to identify that, so then you can get to a place where you're able to eat gluten and it feels fine to your body. That is certainly an opportunity. It's not like everyone has to avoid gluten in order to have optimal health. You can eat gluten and have it be good for your health, as long as your gut health is able to digest that food. So if you go through an elimination diet and you eat gluten, you eat bread after those few weeks, and you don't feel any difference, hooray. That again is powerful information, because then you know, I'm done like looking at all this information out on the internet that's telling me that gluten's bad for everyone, because I know what's right for my own body. And you can move forward confidently, knowing that you are nourishing your body in a way that's supporting your fertility. One cool thing about gluten that I want to add in here is that it is possible to biohack. I don't know if that's the right term for right here, but to alter that gluten structure so that it's easier to digest. And how one does that is through fermentation or making classic sourdough bread. Sourdough bread did become a fad, which is so cool in my opinion. And it's not just a fad because people enjoy cooking it. It is a way to bake bread in a way that pre-digests that protein structure. So then by the time that you eat that sourdough bread, the gluten is easier for the body to absorb. I know countless number of stories of people who cannot eat some white bread or, even wheat bread, loaf of bread from the store, can't eat pasta, right? Can't eat gluten in its whole form. But when they eat a long fermented sourdough bread, fine. Totally fine. No symptoms, no inflammation, no problems with that. And that's because that gluten structure has been broken down in that fermentation process, in the process of that sourdough bread being fermented and cooked. So then when they eat it, the body's not responding as negatively. So if you are somebody who knows that you're sensitive to gluten, or you go through the elimination diet and you find out, yep, gluten is causing some problems for me, then you can try sourdough bread and see maybe sourdough bread responds to you differently. So now you understand the different types of ways that gluten impacts the body through celiac disease or through an IgG food sensitivity. And then you understand how to figure out there's a blood test for celiac, and you know that there is an elimination diet for food sensitivities. But that is the big question here now, as you've gotten to the end of this podcast episode, is what's right for your body. And you need to know that answer and need to take this information forward so then you can be empowered with what you figure out to know if gluten is good or bad for your fertility. And if you are in this place where you are excited, you know that you want to figure out, okay, is gluten good or bad for me? What other foods are? And you need some guidance to understand how to nourish the body, how to feed your body for optimal fertility. And not only that, but you also want to figure out the root cause. What else is keeping you from having regular cycles and ovulating regularly? If you need to know that and you need a path forward, then I'm your doctor. And you can book a free PCOS Fertility Breakthrough Session with me, drangelapotter.com/PCOS. And in that session, you and I are going to talk about what's been going on in your fertility journey. What's been keeping you stuck? What are these missing pieces that are keeping you in a place where you're not able to get pregnant? And then I'll be able to share with you, based on that, this is the single most important next step you can take in order to optimize your fertility. You can sign up for one of those at drangelapotter.com/PCOS. If you are currently in the middle of a medicated cycle, an IUI cycle, or an egg transfer or egg retrieval cycle, you need to wait until those cycles are finished before booking one of those sessions, because you want to know the results of that cycle before you and I talk. If you are loving this podcast and you want to support the podcast, you can head over to Apple Podcast and leave a 5-star review, or simply share this with your friends. And a reminder here that the information on this podcast is just that. It's information, and it should not replace the medical advice that you are currently getting from your doctor. And if nobody else has told you this, today, I want to be the one to tell you that I believe in you. I believe in your ability to get to the root cause of what's been keeping you from getting pregnant. I believe in your ability to turn around your health so that you have the best chance at getting pregnant. I'll see you right back here next Wednesday.